At this point, let's head up to the North Country, and that would give us Dr. Tony Collins and Gary Douglas.
Thank you, Governor. And just like everyone else, I'd like to thank you for coming and hearing us. It's on our side, it's a lot of work. On your side, it's a lot of work, but it's all for the good of our state. I just want to reflect for a moment. I'm not sure how many people thought about the bus tour this morning, but I actually read something into that because I noticed on our bus that when we got into it that Rob Simpson had a seat already marked out for him. Now, I don't want to overinterpret that, but I want to let him know that he sat and he protected that seat. Every time we took a break, he would be first back onto the bus. But, Rob, what you don't know is that there were seat prizes. And if you went to the back of the bus and reached your hand under, you got a prize. Now, I'm not going to reveal what the prize was yet. You'll find out in November.
You guys are way too competitive. You just got to stop. It's got to stop.
We know that you appreciate that, Governor.
Yes, I do. Actually, I do.
It's over to Gary.
Well, you know that it's our good luck charm. We never have started a presentation without our friend and hero Teddy Roosevelt, we're not going to risk any bad luck by doing differently today. He is our inspiration. He loved the North Country. He became president while camping in the Adirondacks, and we always like to be inspired by him. And the words this year, which are appropriate, are "dare great things." He said that. Governor Cuomo has said that this year as well in this process. In effect, dare great things. Engaging the public in the North Country isn't the easiest region to do it in. As we said in our first presentation, we do have many more trees than people. But we do know they're out there, and we've come to interact with them very actively because they have come to interact with us very actively. And every year they engage with us more and more in this process because they're believing in it and they're engaging in it and they're seeing that it is a pathway forward to do things. And this year we got out there once again. We have now hosted, and there's more to come before this process is over, more than 50 public outreach events just since April. 7 public forums, 1 in each county, something Tony and I have done each and every year. And just as an example, in Little Croghan, New York, in Lewis County, home of the National Maple Museum, I might add, 67 citizens turned out to talk with Tony and I about projects and to ask questions. That's the level of engagement we're getting from the very small and sparse communities across the North Country. We had 4 big ideas gatherings, and I'm going to come back to that, but one of them was in Manhattan. 3 of them were in various locations across the North Country, where we invited folks, including non-residents down in New York who had an interest, particularly in the Adirondack region, who have second homes or interests up there, to come in and share big ideas with us. And we gathered quite a bit out of that. 5 agriculture and energy sessions, 2 industrial summits with our manufacturers, 1 in Watertown, 1 in Plattsburgh, 2 events in Canada, and another one coming up next week in Montreal, and 7 tourism stakeholder sessions. Just a sampling of the big ideas out of those big idea sessions, and just a note, some of them are a little out there, like merge northern New York into Canada. The funny thing is, economically, that's exactly what we are doing, although I think they meant it a little differently. I think they meant it politically. To a stream of big ideas that really essentially said the same thing, which were in various ways building on our success. So not abandoning what we've done, but finding what's working and taking it to a new level. Zero-stop border crossing. These are all things that have in various ways been integrated now into what we'll be submitting in October. Biomass linked to agriculture, attract aerospace to Plattsburgh, leverage nanotech in Utica and Albany, vital downtowns to attract millennials and others, locally grown agroponics on a year-round basis, repurpose some of the key sites around the region. Ties to Fort Drum and its skills and our veterans as a key resource. The place for world-class athletics, air service expansion, major venture fund development, region-wide identity and branding, and enhanced STEM education and strategic workforce skills. Just some of the dozens of things that came in, all of which you will see in the not-too-distant future we have embraced into what we'll be submitting.
Thanks, Gary. And we took the opportunity, in fact, when we came down for the first conference in Buffalo, we heard loud and clear on the Upstate Revitalization Initiative, think about your plan, think about what has worked, and focus down on a limited number of strategies in your plan. And so that's exactly what we did. We thought it was a time to rationalize, and I'd say optimize for us was the key word. What has worked well? And so agriculture and clean energy, and you've seen this theme before. In fact, as I put this one bullet point up on the screen, I'd like New York State maybe to think about agriculture, value-added agriculture, and systems, as has been mentioned, to deliver those to our major population centers. You know, it's from Toronto to Montreal to Boston to New York City to Philadelphia. That represents such an opportunity. And so if we had food hubs for distribution and transportation systems, roadways, and whatever it takes to connect from where we grow our food to where it gets eaten, I think that's something that perhaps New York State should think about. So, so for us, by the way, agriculture and clean energy, what limits our agricultural production, particularly in the northern regions, if you're going to grow food year-round, you're going to have to do it in covered conditions, and that's going to require energy and power. And so that's how we're linking clean energy, particularly biomass or any renewable energy source, to help us with covered agriculture. Tourism and community centres. So we had both of those as separate themes, but it's very much chicken and egg. You can't get tourists if you don't have great community centres, and if you have great activities and locations for people to visit, then you can have tourists. And so we've linked those, we think, in a very clever way. And the third theme, advanced manufacturing and innovation. Again, it turns out that transportation for us, materials, and then biotech. These are themes that we're noticing are occurring in other regions, but they are certainly strong themes for us. And I'll return to my bus analogy in a second. So there can be nothing more pertinent to our presentation than to choose wisely. That's back to that theme of rationalizing and optimizing. And so we've collected data from lots of sources, and some of those sources are going to appear right now. Keep going. And in particular, I'd like to emphasize, I guess we had our slides modified slightly before we got here. In the agricultural and energy, we had 2 deep dives supported by University of Buffalo Regional Institute. And what was interesting to us was we had our own preconceptions, but as other people have said, you can't really go with your own self-grown ideas. You need to validate, understand the history, and in particular, what we got out of the University of Buffalo Regional Institute numbers is what are the big metrics that we can follow for our success into the future? And so they were very helpful in both areas. So in agriculture and energy, they affirmed this idea, developed a baseline, and then for our covered agriculture, looked at Maine, New Jersey, and the Netherlands, and we're convinced that we're actually on the right track with all of our thinking. And then advanced manufacturing, I want to say that it affirmed our key strategies. And I want to go back to my little bus analogy. You can read the rest, but I want to say that we noticed, Gary and I, that it was not a Nova bus that we rode on this morning. It was a cheaper import from California. But I want to point out that the Niagara and Buffalo region have ordered Nova buses yet to arrive. So you've seen the light in the western part of the state. Thank you for that. Down the bottom there, we've looked at 3 different models for advanced manufacturing, and one we have now formally partnered with for sharing and assistance. Again, that we'll unveil that. So why do we feel in our region that we have some confidence? And I'll go back to it and I'll say it one more time. We've rationalized and optimized and taken our strategic plan and taken it down to the elements that have worked. So since 2010, employment in the transportation equipment is up 7% to 8,100 employees, and payroll is up 15% to 42 billion. Remember, one of the really unusual facts, probably my most unusual fact, we have 7 counties, and there are components of manufacturing for the transportation industry in each of the 7 counties. Even in Hamilton County, they produce circuit boards for the transportation industry, all the way over to air brake, to Nova Bus. So you can see the pattern, and Bombardier, you can see the pattern of why we've chosen transportation. 6 communities among the top 40 best places to live in New York State. Tourism grew from 108 89 transportation and warehousing firms to 288 since 2010, with 193% growth in employees to 3,245. 6 communities ranked amongst the top 50 New York best towns for millennials. Visitor spending is up 13%, industry employment up 8%, tourism-generated taxes up 10%. So we've been watching the data about choosing why we should invest, why we're going to invest where we want to invest. 82 megawatts of biomass energy produced in 2014, nearly double from 2011. A lot of that is re-energy. New York State should be so proud of the fact that at Fort Drum, they have converted from an oil-fired electric production facility to a biomass production facility. It makes it the only renewable energy base in the nation, and they can go off the grid and remain up if there is a grid failure. That's occurred right here in northern New York. Fort Drum, by the way, is the largest civilian employer in New York State. 292 sites for on-site clean energy generation, up 181%. We are into renewable and clean energy. Acres of farmland up 6%, the value of agricultural produce up 26%, agriculture and forestry employment up 14%. Champaign and Alexandria Bay among the top 10 US-Canada commercial gateways. We're leveraging all of our assets. We have accelerators behind the 3 themes. Obviously, workforce development. We have 2 PTECs in our region, which is kind of a surprisingly disproportionate number. We've got that connection to Canada, and we've been looking again back at what we've done. One of the obvious things, broadband, our other supply chains, that's going to help us connect the region for the future ahead.
Like most of the regions here, we're not quite going to sit here and identify all of our projects, but let's look at it this way. What if? What if we could bring aerospace activity to the region and support our transportation equipment cluster with an international support program? What if we could capitalize on our Olympic heritage to drive private investment and access? What if we could become the state's top producer of high-quality, renewable energy-powered food for the Northeast and global markets?
What if we could organize 3 great manufacturing clusters and power them up with our Canadian connection? What if we could integrate our aims for both tourism and attraction of residents and investment through the creation of quality community centres? And what if we could make the Adirondacks a global centre for immunoengineering focused on infectious disease?
What if we dare great things? Thank you.
Thanks.
Very well done. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Director Toby.
Thank you. You made the point how difficult community engagement is, particularly in the North Country, and although you didn't say it, particularly in the winter when we all started. Having traveled there, I know it's a little bit more difficult to get around. But you chose to expand that community engagement beyond New York's borders and into Canada. Can you tell us something about why you did it and how it worked and what it may offer to us?
Well, because if you suffer listening to me on very many occasions when I speak, you'll often hear me use the term of the North Country being part of a binational economic region with Quebec and Eastern Ontario, within which there's a border, which is an inconvenience we need to manage, and that becomes the focus of a lot of strategies for maintaining that connectivity and fluidity, but which no longer defines regionality. And so for us, that connection across the border is, in almost every sector, the single biggest driving force, including in terms of foreign direct investment to give us much of the manufacturing base that we've developed and expanded over recent years. A few examples. We did a joint conference with the Quebec Transportation Equipment Cluster in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu in June. On Monday and Tuesday, Tony and I will be up doing a series of sessions being organized in partnership with us by Montreal International and the government of Quebec to talk with technology sectors about what we're talking about and how we can further build connections with those same sectors in Quebec. For us, it's just natural. It's what we do. It's what we've been doing for many years. But we're certainly doing it in an even more strategic way in terms of connecting it to certain sectors of activity that certainly 10 years ago, it was more about, you saw that great expansion of warehousing activity. It was more about those sorts of things. Now it's more about strategic clusters.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Boone.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I was struck by the mention of 6 North Country communities ranked as top places to live. Can you explain why you think these communities are popular, and are there any takeaways that might be a model for other areas to emulate?
This was done recently by a website called niche.com, which specifically puts itself out there as a place to go and find out how communities rank, how colleges rank, cities, et cetera, as places to live, places to go to school. So it was a range of factors. We did quite strongly to very strongly in all of them, included things like cost of living, relative cost of housing. So you have to be livable. There are a lot of places that are very, very great to visit, but not very affordable to live in. So it was good to see those factors put in there, but also things to do in the category about millennials, that even bars, restaurants, and coffee shops, and access to those, and how many there are. Your degree of being wired and having a broadband and cell phone service and all of that kind of access for that generation. Arts and culture, all of those things went into their rankings.
Yeah, can you just name some of the towns or communities?
Plattsburgh was one. Messina, Ogdensburg were 2. Malone was one. They were scattered about the region.
Okay. Thank you.
Watertown was one.
Okay.
All in the water.
Yeah. Quite interesting.